Okay, good morning. My name's Gary Cazalet and I am the teacher of the Law Apps class. Welcome to the 9th Melbourne Law School Law Apps Awards competition. I want to start by acknowledging that I'm on the country of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and Aboriginal elders and Indigenous elders of other communities that may be watching and the lands that students are on at the moment. I'd like to welcome the judges, students, representatives of students' families, client organisations, and colleagues and friends and family from in Australia and across the world. This morning, students will compete for the Herbert Freehills Award for the Best Law App or Bot. And the award will be decided by a panel of judges that I will introduce in a moment. We'll also have an Audience Choice Award, which will be voted on by those of you who are watching online. When the judges go out to deliberate at the end of the presentations, you'll get an opportunity to vote for what you think is the best app or bot. And voting will start after the last presentation and finish before the judges come in. Let me just deal with a couple of housekeeping matters. For audience members, could you please keep your microphone off and your video off? If you put your microphone on or your video on, you'll bounce onto the screen in the middle of a presentation, which will be rather interrupting. This presentation will be recorded and will be uploaded so that people that can't watch it now will be able to watch it later. In the Law Apps class, students work with community organisations or with ideas that they've pitched to develop applications that will increase access to justice, understanding of justice and legal empowerment. A really important part of our class is for students to understand the concept of human design and use design skills in building and designing their apps and bots. And I'm sure you'll see all of those things happening this morning. This semester, like last semester and the semester before, was taught wholly online. We're very hopeful that next semester, other than the fact that we've got some more lockdowns in Melbourne today, will be taught in person. But we've had students joining the class from around the globe, including from China, from Taiwan, from New Zealand, and across Australia. I want to thank the people that have supported this subject. First of all, Herbert Freehills. They've been a great supporter this year and in previous years as well. In particular, Alan Peckham and David Sin. David has spoken to the class 3 times and he's going to be one of the judges today. Herbert Freehills' support of the subject has enabled it to be expanded and for me to employ teaching assistants as well. I'm very grateful for their support. Neota Logic has provided the software platform for one of the software programs that we've used in this subject, and they have supported us as well. And I'd like to thank John Lord and Kevin Mulcahy in New York. We've also included Josef as well as the software platform, and that was developed by 2 Melbourne Law School graduates, Tom Dreyfus and Sam Flynn, and I'd like to thank them. I'd also like to thank my 2 teaching assistants, Chris Girardi and Matt Lee, who have supported me and the students throughout the semester. And my final thanks is to the students, and you will see some extraordinary work, I think, over the next couple of hours. They have put in a huge amount of work over the semester, and I'm sure have been stretched in ways that they didn't imagine when they started the class. I'd like to also particularly acknowledge those students that for them, this is their last class of their law degree. Now I'd like to introduce the judges and then we're going to kick off. We have David Sin, who I've mentioned before. He's the Managing Partner of Real Estate Asia Pacific for Herbert Freehills. Dom Simpson, who was a member of my first Law Apps class way back in 2015. And he's now Director of Consulting and Solutions APAC at Neota Logic. Luke Thomas, who is a Senior Legal Designer at Portable in Melbourne, who's another Melbourne Law School JD graduate, but unfortunately for Luke, he finished his law degree before we started teaching Law Apps. And finally, we have Henry Ho, who was in the 2018 Law Apps class, and he's now Legal Technology Lead at Josef. Thank you, all of you, for agreeing to judge today. So the rules are that each team will have a maximum of 8 minutes to present, then they'll be followed by 4 minutes for judges' questions. I'm going to move on now to the first lot of presentations. I'm going to be interrupting students if they stray too much over the 8 minutes allotted to them. So the first presentation, and I invite the students that are in that group to turn on their video, and I think everybody else can turn off their video, judges included for the moment, just so that we've only got those people on the screen. And if everybody could turn off their video other than the group in the first group, Tōtara.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Tapiwa, and I'm excited to introduce my teammates, Ella, Christine, Kayla, Lara, and our app, Tōtara. Before we begin, I'd like to do an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge that the law school sits in the Wurundjeri land of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Sovereignty was never ceded. I'm currently zooming in from New Zealand, and our app was created for a New Zealand government organisation. So I'd also like to say a karakia, which is a traditional Māori opening for a meeting or presentation. This kōrero was given to us by the Ahi Ka team at the Human Rights Commission to convey the app's purpose of delivering strong support and advocacy. Kia rite ko ki te Tōtara. E tu te rangatira ki runga i te whenua. Mori ora ti wairua o te Tōtara. E tu, tane mahuta, horahia nia here. Porea nai e te hau, makere ana, e tu, tane mahuta. Our app was built for the Office of Human Rights Proceedings, which is an independent arm of the New Zealand Human Rights Commission. The OHRP provides free legal representation to New Zealanders who wish to take human rights and privacy complaints to the Human Rights Review Tribunal. This app was truly a collaboration between us and the OHRP, and we were fortunate to receive support from Solicitor Josh Suka and the Director of Human Rights Proceedings, Michael Timmins, as well as cultural direction from Hemi Parehi at the Human Rights Commission. Their wealth of knowledge helped us to ensure our app was both legally accurate and culturally appropriate. I started working at the OHRP earlier this year and noticed that there was a real lack of public knowledge regarding its services, and I also noticed how both inaccessible and complex human rights litigation can be. My teammate Ella is going to talk more about the key issues Tōtara helps the OHRP with.
The old OHRP website was comparatively inaccessible, confusing, and difficult to navigate considering the wide variety of users accessing the service. It displayed images of institutions such as the Supreme Court, who are not typically engaged in initial discrimination and privacy claims represented by the OHRP. We built Tōtara to overcome these issues and increase public knowledge of the OHRP and its services. Recognizing that our team had to ask a variety of questions to understand the depth of this area of law, Tōtara is designed for users without a legal background, assisting them in understanding human rights complexities. The old website predominantly attracted applicants from a New Zealand English-speaking background. So in making Tōtara, we were very conscious of ensuring the app was accessible to Maori and Pacific Island users. We also sought to streamline the request process for the OHRP, reducing the amount of initial privacy and discrimination complaints by directing users to the appropriate website. My teammate Christine is now going to talk more about why we felt Neota was the most appropriate platform to provide this experience.
A key requirement from the OHRP was that the app be accessible in both English and Māori because of the language requirements in New Zealand, and they wanted the option to expand into other languages in the future in order to accommodate immigrant populations. Because of both the legal requirements and the important subject matter, we opted not to use the Google Translate plugin, and instead the Māori translations will be applied using the Neota Translation Manager after the OHRP has gone through the official government procurement process. Neota also gives them the ability to apply additional languages in the future using the same process. We built a multifunctional app which provides both information on the claims that the OHRP can assist with and an easy to navigate interview that focuses only on the grounds affecting the user. My teammate Kayla will now discuss the design in a bit more detail.
In consideration of the subject matter that Tōtara is concerned with, we were very intentional about adding a human touch to all aspects of our design. Our logo is a visual representation of the name of our app, Tōtara. This is a Māori name for a very tall, sturdy, and resilient tree native to New Zealand, and we wanted this to signify the support and stability that our application seeks to offer to its users. We chose a bold green color as it corresponds to our emblem and is the color most comfortably perceivable by the human eye. We also felt that it connotes the sense of tranquility, inclusivity, and gender neutrality that we wanted to convey to our users. In terms of language, accessible and compassionate language was our aim. We refined our scripts to employ simple language and grammar, as well as short sentences that would be coherent to a wide range of users, including those for whom English is not a first language. So with the help of my teammate Lara, let's have a look at Tōtara. For accessibility purposes, you'll see that we've created this educational section whereby the user can learn more about human rights in New Zealand. And if they are more of a visual learner and prefer to watch a video explaining what Tōtara can do, they can do so here.
Welcome to Tōtara. This video will share information on your human rights and how the Tōtara app can help you. We're all different. We have diverse ethnicities and nationalities, religions and beliefs, ages, gender identities, sexual orientations, and disabilities. Sometimes we encounter people who don't respect or recognise these differences. It can make you feel discriminated against and alone. This can have an impact on your mental health, affecting both your private and public life. However, there are legal protections for all people residing in New Zealand. These are your human rights.
To give a demonstration of Tōtara, we will follow the case study of Taika, the man in the video who was discriminated against by his employer in the workplace. Taika uses our drop-down buttons and confirms that he's been discriminated against on the basis of his sexual orientation and that he has also experienced racial harassment. So he decides to apply to the OHRP for representation. The first screen sets out what Taika can expect in filling out the form. Taika has already submitted a claim to the Human Rights Commission regarding the treatment he has received by his employer. However, as his complaint is still not resolved, he's asking the OHRP for help. Taika notes that the process might be upsetting, but he feels that he is in a safe space to complete the form. He selects the relevant grounds of his claim, 2 out of the 16 options, and indicates that it occurred within his job on the next page. Taika fills out the defendant details. In this case, both his boss and his employer organisation could be defendants, but he decides only to complain about his boss. He selects that offensive remarks and jokes were made about his race and that he was called racist names. And he indicates that he was discriminated against on the basis of the fact that he is homosexual. Taika writes here in more detail about the discrimination and harassment that he experienced in his workplace. Short descriptions of the grounds on which he's submitting his request are above for his reference. And he could also choose to upload a video statement or an audio statement if he'd prefer. Applicants who are less confident in writing may find this option more comfortable and accessible. Taika fills out his contact details so the OHRP may contact him regarding his request. And in the next screen, he can read through a summary of his submission. This demographic section is completely optional, and Taika decides not to fill them out today. They will have no impact on how the OHRP handle his request. He can either download the report here and not submit it yet, or he can send the email to the OHRP and include himself. Today, he decides to submit, and he's emailed his confirmation. The email lets him know that a person from the OHRP will be in contact with him soon, and it also includes an infographic about what Taika can expect in his process getting to the tribunal. Thank you for watching our Tōtara demonstration today, and ka kite anō.
Thank you very much. I'll let the judges put on their videos now and throw them across to them to ask any questions.
I'm happy to start. I mean, I loved the use of the videos and the way you interplayed that with kind of the provision of the information. I'm interested to work out, how did you identify the user needs and the need to incorporate the videos in there? How do you identify that process?
Hi, I'm happy to answer that one. We did a user testing process where we sent out an initial kind of draft version of the app, and we tried to get a range of ages, people from different backgrounds, because we wanted ordinary people who didn't have a legal background or didn't have knowledge about human rights legislation, but who may in the future experience some kind of discrimination or human rights complaint, to be able to test it out and see what works for them. And a lot of them wanted sort of visual features and lots of different options depending on their preferences.
I'd ask the next question. Yeah, thanks for that. That was really cool to see, and I love the thoughtfulness behind things, even little things like not using a plugin just to make sure you get the language rights. With things like the way you grouped the different characteristics of the different kinds of discrimination that may happen, were those kind of bound by the legislation you were using, or are those kind of how people describe their own issues?
No, you go, Lara. No worries.
Just confirming, are you talking about in the education bit where they were each under the separate main headings?
Yeah, the first main headings when someone's going into it and they want to think about, okay, which one of these apply to me?
Yeah, I think we just tried to make it as like simple to find what you might be looking for. So we basically talked about the sex discrimination stuff. Someone is likely, if they've experienced sexual harassment, sexual orientation discrimination, or discrimination on the basis of sex, to know that they could find that under there. There were some that we had to leave separate, like disability and age. We didn't feel like they could be comfortably grouped in anything, but otherwise it was a fairly like emotional process rather than a legislative one.
I've got a question just sort of following on from that. Did you consider at all, because you've sort of got it in two categories, there's the, work out which one applies to me, and then there's go through the kind of questionnaire process. Did you consider whether or not it would work to sort of just start off in the questionnaire and kind of help the user through working out which one applied to them?
Yeah, so we actually, I'm not sure if we really highlighted it in our demonstration, but there is an option for people to go straight to the questionnaire from that cover page. Once they get to that questionnaire, if they're going through and they realize that there's, like Lara said, 3 protected attributes on the basis of sex, and they're not quite sure which applies to them, there is then a little button that says, if you're unsure which one applies to you, please feel free to go to our education section. All you have to do is click this button, you'll be directed to that, and then we will assist you in essentially figuring out which one applies.
Just to add on to that, when we initially planned it out, we did intend on having more questions for the questionnaire, but in speaking with the OHRP afterwards, they asked us not to make the user feel like their claim might not be applicable, and they didn't want us to weed out potential claimants. So we moved that section. We moved the questions that might weed them out of the questionnaire.
All right, thank you so much for the presentation and for the questions. Well done, and congratulations on a wonderful application. All right, we're going to turn to the next group now. So the next group is protections at work.
Hi everyone, we're the Protections at Work, or PAW team. I'm Sabine, and today I'm joined by my teammates Jessie, Daniel, Ramon, and Grace. Everyone watching this today will at some point in their life have a job. That means that everyone here, as well as the general public, need to understand what protections are available to them when something unfair happens at work. Enter Protections at Work, the app that helps both current and prospective employees and independent contractors determine if they're eligible for a general protections claim. If they are, the app will help users to complete the application form to submit to the Fair Work Commission. So, why is it important? Well, our initial user testing demonstrated a lack of awareness of general protections. Participants didn't know what to do in the event that something unfair happened at work. No participants had ever heard of general protections claim. Additionally, the legislation is confusing and lengthy. For example, take a look at one of the resources currently available to users. This is 189 pages of information, which is an enormous amount of information to digest. Additionally, the current Fair Work application form simply lists section numbers, leaving the users to understand which section might apply to them. So how does Protections at Work combat this? Well, Ramon will outline this now.
Thanks, Sabine. I'll briefly speak to the functionality of the PAW app. So the preliminary function is to provide users with accessible information on general protections. And this is achieved in 2 main ways. So users are only presented with information that's relevant to their personal circumstances. Second, PAW takes the guesswork out of having to research and apply those dense and complicated legislative provisions by asking a simple series of yes or no questions to deliver a conclusion on whether you are likely to have a claim. PAW is a very hardworking app, and many of the questions that it asks at the start are those needed to fill out the correct form to be lodged with the Fair Work Commission. By recording the user's answers in the first stage, PAW has the capability to pre-fill the required form. Well, seeing is believing, so I'll hand you over to Daniel to demonstrate PAW.
Great, thanks Ramon. Well, here it is. Welcome to our app. As you can see, we've designed a punchy cover page to both draw users' attention and introduce them to the app. We chose this color scheme, name, and logo, all based on user testing. So let's have a look at how a user might experience PAW. Say our user, Jo, has recently been dismissed from work, and she believes it's because she told her boss she was pregnant. She thinks it's a bit unfair, but she doesn't know anything about her general protections or legal rights? Well, if she comes to Paul, she'll find this introduction and this introductory video, which we designed. Let's take a quick look now.
Hi, welcome to the Protections at Work app. This app will help you work out whether you are likely to have a general protections claim. My name is...
Great. So the video goes on to explain what a general protections claim is and how our app can help her. After watching it, she'll have a better idea about how the app can help her situation and whether she wants to use it. On this next page, we'll find Max, our friendly guide, who appears throughout the app to explain some of the difficult terms that we use. Now, throughout the app, there will be a progress bar on top to show how far through the app Joe is. Our app begins by asking some general questions about the user's situation. Joe's an employee, so let's click that. And our app helps users to step through their claim by using clear, bite-sized questions like this one. Concepts which are a little more difficult to explain are supported by videos, which appear throughout the app. We'll talk about that in just a second. Now, Joe's been dismissed, so let's say yes. General protections claims are full of legal thresholds. Here's one, and here's another. So there are some time restrictions on lodging a claim. Joe's entered her relevant dates here, as you can see, and our app will help calculate if those time restrictions have been met. So they haven't, but Joe does have the chance to explain why she should still be able to make her claim, as shown here. Based on user feedback, we've created videos that appear throughout the app, which help to explain some of the more complex ideas that appear. So let's take a quick look at just one of them.
It's unlawful for an employer to dismiss you because of your race, colour, sex, sexual orientation, age, physical or mental disability, marriage.
Now, the video does go on for a little bit, so let's leave that there for now. On this next page, she'll be able to select the relevant grounds of discrimination which she believes apply to her. So here she selected marital status and pregnancy. And PAW is comprehensive. It ensures that a broad range of general protections claims, even those that are not quite so obvious, are considered. And finally, on this next page is our preliminary report. Jesse's here to tell us more about that.
Thanks for that, Daniel. So this is what we call the preliminary report, which gives users a clear conclusion on whether they are eligible or not for a general protections claim. The dropdowns show the reasons why PAW reached this conclusion, as well as other organizations the user can reach out to. So at this point, users can download their preliminary report and take this information away, which took less than 10 minutes to receive. However, PAW can also help users with the next step of lodging a Fair Work application. The 10-page document is daunting for most, but PAW removes this barrier by simply asking the user a few additional questions, which all feed into pre-filling the form. Things like personal details, accessibility details, and so forth. PAW will also not waste a user's time by re-asking questions. Here, we can see that Joe's dismissal dates, which she input earlier, have been matched, but she also has the option to change her answer if she wishes. And so based on Joe's previous answers, PAW also identifies which sections of the Fair Work Act have been breached. Here, when Joe needs to explain where the law has been breached, she knows exactly which sections to reference. Upon finishing, users will be given their application form and a concluding video. It tells users what the next steps are and how to lodge their application. Depending on whether they selected dismissal or adverse action, they'll also receive separate forms. Let's open up Joe's completed application. We can see that what was originally a very complex document has now become a user's tailored, ready-to-go form. This empowers users to feel that they are being heard. For example, if we look down at contravention, we can see that the answers given way back at the start of the app have all been filled out here, such as marital status and pregnancy under the discrimination attributes. Now over to Grace for the future of PAW.
There are a number of different ways that the app could be scaled in the future to improve functionality and reach a wider user base. First, in the future, the app could provide a start-to-end service, enabling users to find out if they're eligible, complete the form, pay the fee, and lodge their claim all within the one application. Second, we could also expand coverage of the app to include sham contracting employers and industrial associations. Lastly, this app could also serve as a data resource that could assist organisations in education campaigns, to lobby for better workplace protections, as well as identifying particular industries that repeatedly breach general protections laws. Workplace protections are only effective if people know about them and are able to use them. The Protections at Work app gives people the tools to know what their rights are and empowers them to take action to enforce those rights. On behalf of the PAW team, thank you for your time today.
Congratulations on all that wonderful work. I'm going to hand it over to the judges for their questions now.
I'll start again. I'm interested to know how you came up with the concept and identified the need, because from what I can see, you didn't work with a group, but how did you identify the need? And then tell me a bit more about the user testing as well.
David, your video's off. I don't know if you mentioned.
Sorry, I'll turn it on. I'll turn it on so you can see me as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question. So we completed 3 stages of user testing. The initial stage was a survey that went out to over 10 users and where we asked them questions about situations at work where they thought maybe something unfair had happened to them. And if anything like that had happened, what they had done in that situation. And for some of our users, they had things happen to them at work, but none of them were sure what to do. So that's where we knew that there was a need to get more information out. And then our following stages of user testing, we engaged with the users to ask them questions about design. That's when we decided to bring the videos in, because some of our users, when going through our app, were not sure about really complex terms that were in the form that they're required to fill out. And so we wanted to make it as sort of user-friendly, as accessible as possible. And then our final stage was our prototype of the app, where we just chose things like the name of the app, the color scheme, to just sort of, I guess, help the user feel like they were being supported through the app. And it was really important for us to choose, for example, a name that was making it really obvious what the user was going to be able to go through. So yeah, that was our user testing.
Just a question on sort of supporting the user. So in the presentation, you had the user who was eligible. How do you handle in the application when the user isn't eligible?
So just as the user here was presented with the eligible report, a user who isn't eligible is presented with an ineligible report. And in that situation, the extra resources and places to go for additional help are highlighted, because obviously at this stage with the time constraints we had, we couldn't provide an entirely full service thing. So for that, it's more of a referral to other organizations where they're not eligible. And we also tell them why they're not eligible. So there are quite a few barriers, which are yes or no questions. For example, if you're a state government employee, you're ineligible. So we'll tell you that as well.
Thanks. Hey, great job. I really enjoyed the presentation. I saw that at the beginning there was like 189 pages to digest and all these sections that people didn't know what they were for. Did you guys go through a process of kind of deciding which issues came about more frequently and which sections were more relevant, and then kind of make an assessment as to which sections your app would tackle? And yeah, can you take me through how you kind of went through that?
Sure, I'm happy to take that one. So as I kind of mentioned at the end of the presentation, we did kind of limit the scope. So there are some general protections that actually apply to employers and industrial associations. When we were kind of determining the scope, we decided that given there are kind of power imbalances at work between an employee or a contractor, in contrast to an industrial association or an employer, we really decided that there was more need and more vulnerability on the side of employees and contractors. So that's what we decided to focus on in terms of the scope. But beyond that, we really tried to make, in terms of the actual general protections grounds, we focused on covering all of them, given that we thought a user might approach the app not necessarily being sure which apply to them. So it was important to kind of cover all the ground to determine if they're eligible, because we didn't obviously want to miss anything and advise someone that they were ineligible when they were actually eligible.
Yeah, just to add to that, we definitely do try to be as comprehensive as possible, but when choosing, the slight 1 or 2 grounds not to include, we base that on a lot of the preliminary research which we did. We went through OSLI, LexisNexis, and actually just looked at how many cases involved, discrimination, how many cases involved workplace rights, and we found that the ones we decided to settle on were overwhelmingly the most common claims made in court.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Grace.
All right. I really like the fact that you can go halfway through the progress, export it as needed, or there's different stopping points before you actually apply. Just curious about the actual progress bar that you guys put in, which can be very helpful. The terminology there with the things like grounds and terms like that, did you test that with people, and does it kind of resonate with how they see the process as well?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. So definitely with the wording, it's quite difficult because you don't want to use too, complex or legal terms that people wouldn't understand. So we actually did have a few revisions of the progress bar, but we found the clear distinction between the report and the application was quite clear to people. Report felt like something people would just receive and take away, whereas the application, that word sort of suggested that it was something that was more engaging and personal that they needed to go submit. So we definitely did go through a few revisions to get that most suitable to the user.
I'll also just add in that I think it was really important for us to match the terminology used in the application form. I think that that's what comes up in the form when the user gets it at the end, and we didn't want to arbitrarily choose words or other terms that a user might be confused about.
Yep, makes sense. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. All right, the next presentation is CoRR.
Hi, my name is James, and I am joined by Claire, Jiyoung, JD, Lauren, and Patrick to present our app CoRR, which we have made in collaboration with the Neighborhood Justice Center, also known as the NJC. CoRR stands for Conflict Resolution Roadmap. CoRR solves 2 key issues. First, there is often a gap between people's expectations and the reality of applying for a personal safety intervention order. Every day, people come to the NJC after being advised to apply for an intervention order by family, friends, or the police. In some cases, mediation or the NJC's unique peacemaking program would result in better outcomes. Our app educates users about the process of applying for a personal safety intervention order and the alternative dispute resolution methods available to them. The second issue our app addresses is the difficulty people face when completing a personal safety intervention order application. Where an intervention order is the right way forward, applicants have been forced to fill out a long and complicated form without assistance, which frequently results in flawed applications. CoRR improves the user's experience and lifts the quality of the applications submitted to the court.
CoRR is designed for people experiencing conflict who may be stressed and overwhelmed and unaware of the best way to resolve their dispute. When the user comes to our app, they can find out about all of their options in one place. The homepage of the app shows the user an overview of the different pathways available to them. This helps the user quickly understand what each option involves. The user can find out more information about each of these pathways by clicking on the relevant module. Because the NJC wanted to highlight alternative methods of dispute resolution, which may be more beneficial than an intervention order, the design of the main menu is intended to give equal weight to each pathway. The different pathways that are presented to the user depend on their location, as the NJC's peacemaking service is only available to those in its catchment area. By asking for the user's postcode at the beginning of the app, those who are not eligible for peacemaking will not see information that is not relevant to them. We have included a Why Ask button here and throughout the app, so the user knows why certain information is needed.
During testing, we showed our client different styles of videos, including animation and direct-to-camera presentations. The live action style was found to be more informative, so that is what you will find in our app. Let's actually have a look inside our app now. In each module, there is a video that explains the topic. Throughout the app, we have 7 informational videos. These videos have closed captions for those with hearing impairments. Here's an example of one of those videos.
Peacemaking is primarily concerned with restoring or creating relationships and community building. During peacemaking, everyone affected by the conflict, not just the applicant and the respondent, will sit in the same room and talk with each other.
Plain language is used throughout the app. Where technical words are necessary, they're explained in simple terms using pop-up definitions. Alongside the video, we have included a written transcript. To make the written information easily accessible, each transcript is broken down into the topics it covers and placed in an expandable box. If the user wishes to pursue one of the alternative methods of dispute resolution, we have included the relevant contact information on the module. For peacemaking, there is an option for users to put in their details, and the app will send an expression of interest directly to the NJC. By doing this, CoRR makes it easy for users to take the first step to resolving their conflict. These alternative methods of dispute resolution can have many advantages for people experiencing conflict. If a user skips the education modules, they will be given a prompt to consider them before applying for an intervention order. However, because these alternative methods are not appropriate in all cases, the app does not make it mandatory to look at them.
If the user wishes to go ahead with a personal safety intervention order, CoRR simplifies the process and supports the user to make an effective application. We will now take you through the application form. For the purposes of this presentation, we have pre-filled some answers and will only show certain parts of the form in the interests of time. As we have shown, the paper application form is very long and includes questions that are not relevant to all applicants. CoRR removes all unnecessary questions, reducing the time it takes to fill in the application. One of the most common difficulties with the paper form is an accurate and factual account of what actually happened. We were told by the registrar that people often struggle to clearly write out what has happened in a way that is actually helpful to the registrar. Writing out an account of what happened from scratch is daunting, and it is easy to miss key pieces of information, such as dates and locations. We have broken down questions about incidents into smaller prompts to make sure all the necessary information is included. This page, in fact, shows prompts for what is only one complex question in the original paper form. The user can simply select behaviors and also the effect that those behaviors have had on them from several checkboxes. Once the user makes a selection, they will be prompted for more details. Example text also gives the user an indication about what to include. The app will then automatically generate a narrative in prose, including all the information the user has given. In the case that the user wants to change anything, they can still edit this text.
We have included a dynamic progress bar to orient the user through the application. The steps in the progress bar will change depending on which sections of the form are relevant to the user. Because the information required is extremely personal and may be emotionally distressing, such as details of a physical or sexual assault, we have included a privacy statement and contact details for support services. Once the user has answered all the necessary questions, CoRR automatically produces a fully filled personal safety intervention order application. Once the application is filled out, the user can download a PDF version. For users in the NJC catchment area, CoRR provides the option to send the application directly to the court rather than printing it out and taking it in person. This is not currently available for those outside the catchment area because not all magistrate courts accept the form via email.
To help improve the app for the future, users are also given the option of providing anonymous feedback about the app. This app empowers users to make an informed choice about the best way to resolve their dispute. We envision this app being rolled out beyond the NJC catchment area to other community legal centres. By having a side of the app that does not include NJC-specific information and presenting all options for dispute resolution in a single app, other organisations, such as the police, can refer people to CoRR no matter where they live. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We welcome any questions that judges may have.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Excellent. All right, I'll hand it over to the judges.
I mean, that was really excellent. And I really like how much consideration was given to really helping the user in terms of, you know, the why ask kind of pop-up that you had, you know, the videos and all of that sort of thing with the captions. That was really great. You also mentioned about, there's obviously some fairly sensitive questions in the application and you've kind of got the resources there, but were there sort of either some kind of user testing around the actual language of the questions themselves? I'm just thinking particularly, you know, please describe your sexual assault, that sort of thing. Was there any sort of testing done around that?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. Like, unfortunately, we couldn't test our app, I guess, with actual members of the public that were going through kind of the conflict resolution PSIO journey, just for time constraints kind of around the ethical approvals here. We did have access to the tremendous knowledge that was kind of amassed by the registrars at the NJC. And so the language of the questions, as well as kind of the overall, I guess, journey that the user takes through the app was tested over several rounds with the registrars, and they've seen thousands of applications and also have done like in-person interviews with actual users. And so we kind of were getting secondhand, I suppose, user testing information through that process. And I mean, I guess additionally, we were also able to test a bit of that plain language and also the visual design elements kind of through friends and family a little bit. And kind of that helped us figure out like an approachable way and a sensible way of using the language. And I think initially in our app, we actually had kind of more animated and kind of cute designs that we took out because we felt like through user testing found out that people felt that they were a bit inappropriate for kind of the seriousness and sensitivity of the questions.
Thanks, that's great.
No question really, just feedback. I really liked how you guys had example text on providing the users with, you know, a way to provide their answers after they pick the multiple choice. I thought that was clever. And then the way you guys added a privacy focus and then adding, you know, a pop-up for people to get help if they needed to. I thought that was really well done. So yeah, just positive feedback. Good job, guys.
Right. Any other questions, Luke or David? Throwing to you.
Just maybe the process map. So you guys made the map yourself. Can you just tell me about how you went about doing that illustration?
I'm happy to take this one as well. I guess so that was really the result of having like several meetings with the registrars, and it's actually a really complicated area where I guess, you know, you can actually divert to mediation at many different stages of the PSIO process, like even after you've lodged an application and so on. So it was very difficult to kind of condense all that into one diagram. And so the diagram that we came up with is probably more of a general user experience, but our emphasis with that diagram actually isn't so much the details of the process as much as it is showing that peacemaking and mediation can often be a shorter process and then potentially also result in better outcomes.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Any other questions? Just checking out. All right, thank you very much for the presentation. That was, sorry, I'll put my video on. It's always hard to remember which one you've got to press. Thank you so much for your presentations. That was excellent. Thank you. All right, the next presentation is for the Refugee VISAdvisor group.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kavi, and with me I have Kaidi, Sasha, and Daniel. And together we've created the Refugee VISAdvisor chatbot. So we've been working with a friend of mine at Refugee Legal who told me about some of the issues faced by visa applicants who are often confused by the process and don't know where to start. So our goal was to help refugees and asylum seekers navigate Australia's refugee and temporary visa regime. We started the process by visiting the Department of Home Affairs website to learn more about the respective visas. With 8 different refugee and humanitarian visas, we quickly realized just how unhelpful and overwhelming the website would be. This would be even more so for individuals with non-legal or non-English speaking backgrounds. For example, when you use a digital assistant or click on one of the refugee visa subclasses, you're directed to a page with little to no specific information and who is eligible for the visa. Refugee VISAdvisor aims to address this problem. So our chatbot runs users through a series of simple questions, arriving at the most appropriate visa through a process of elimination that narrows down the list of visas. In less than a minute, and without having to comb through all 8 visas, the user is provided with a solid starting point for the visa application process. The end report explains their outcome, contains links for more information, and provides them with the contact details of the people who can help. This report can then be forwarded to a legal advisor, saving them precious time and providing them with relevant background information on the user. And I'll pass it on to Kaidi, who's going to talk about why we use Josef.
Thanks, Cap. As you can see, we made the choice to use Josef to create the Refugee VISAdvisor. We were aiming for a relaxed tone to make the program more approachable and user-friendly. We found that the chatbot style of Josef makes it easier to achieve it, as it can reproduce what happens in a face-to-face interview. Josef also allows users to scroll up and see a record of their past answers. Have a record of the chat as the user moves forward, helps avoid confusion and easily allow the user to jump back and change their answers if required. The operating system in Josef is also simple and easy to edit. This is especially important if this chatbot is handed over to an organization such as Refugee Legal, who could be in charge of the operating of the chatbot in the future. A layperson could easily take over our bot to edit or change without much difficulty. Finally, Josef can easily be used on a computer and a phone, which is essential for our users who may not have access to certain type of technology or internet bandwidth. Now I will pass to Daniel to introduce how the chatbot works.
Thanks, Kaidi. So you might be wondering, how does this chatbot actually work? So the Refugee VISAdvisor goes through a series of questions to determine which of the refugee visas the applicant will be best suited for. There are 5 refugee-specific visas. However, this app allows for 9 potential outcomes, including other options like the Temporary Protection Visa and the Safe Haven Enterprise Visa. In this way, a person who is not sure whether they would be considered a refugee at all can use this app and broadly determine the most suitable visa and the application which has the most likelihood of success for them. Now, Sasha will lead a demonstration of our chatbot.
In order to demonstrate how the Refugee VISAdvisor works, let me introduce you to Tariq. Tariq is a homosexual man from a small community in Iran. Rumours about his orientation have been circulating around his community. His home has been subject to violent attacks and he fears greatly for his safety. Now, Tariq is originally from and currently living in Iran, so he would select no to the question, are you inside Australia? And yes to are you living inside your home country? The simplicity of our bot is very important to us. We have used yes, no, and when necessary, unsure buttons so that the individual is not required to type many responses. This is to keep the program as easy to understand as possible, especially for those who don't speak English. The next question asks if Tariq has received a referral from the UNHCR. Now, Tariq is a little unsure of what this means, so he's going to check the hint for clarification. We felt that the less text on the main page, the better, to avoid overwhelming the user and make the bot accessible. We've also used emojis and images in some areas, as you can see on the screen, to keep the tone relaxed and give a hint to those who may be struggling. Now, Tariq remembers that he made an application for something a few months ago, but doesn't know if it was for the UNHCR referral. So to be on the safe side, he selects unsure. The use of unsure is also essential to make sure the user doesn't get stuck partway through the program. Wherever the answer unsure is selected, we equate it to no, which sends the user down the path with the most possible options so that we don't inaccurately rule a visa option out. The next question asks if Tariq is able to leave his home country. Here, Tariq would select no, and he is also not a woman, so the next question would be no as well. Now we're getting towards the end. Tariq has 2 options for the final report. The first is a downloadable report, which tells the user what visa type is most suitable for them, their responses on the chatbot, potential other visa options, and more details of where to get help. Unfortunately, Tariq is borrowing a computer, and so he can't download it. He won't have access to it. We acknowledge that not every user will have unfettered access to a device on which to download and save the report. For example, some users will use a phone. This is why we have a second option where the user can request that the report be emailed to them as well. Tariq decides to put in his email address and get the final report sent to him. Now, if we have a look inside our final report, we can see a description of what an ICH visa is. The in-country special humanitarian visa subclass 201 is for people that have not yet arrived in Australia and allows them to move to Australia if they are subject to persecution in their home country. As we said at the start of this demo, Tariq is being persecuted for his sexuality, so clearly the bot has come to the right conclusion by presenting the ISH visa option to him. There are a number of helpful hyperlinks in this report so that the user can easily navigate to whichever website they need to visit, such as the contact page for Refugee Legal. Tariq is now able to get in contact with a migration agent to help him fill out his application for the ISH visa. Now I'll pass back to Daniel to give us some advice on future features we'd like to add to this chatbot.
So there are a number of improvements or additions that would make this app even more accessible and useful for both potential visa applicants and migration professionals. The first change would be to add the ability to run the app in different languages. This could mean getting translators involved and offering different versions of the app in the key languages spoken by users. We believe this would be preferable to using a program such as Google Translate, which can offer sometimes unreliable translations. Of course, this would involve extensive user testing to determine which language would provide the most benefit. There's also scope for a video version of the app to be developed where the user plays short videos which ask the questions. This can be done in Josef, and we feel that having a spoken form of the app would be beneficial for individuals who are illiterate or who have trouble reading. Josef offers a function to put the app into a phone format on a web page, which is very, very useful. We feel like the next step is a pop-up chat box, as this would allow the user to have the chat and chat history available at the bottom of the screen while maintaining the ability to navigate other pages of a website. And that's our presentation. Thank you for watching.
Well done. Congratulations. I'll throw over to the judges.
Okay. Thank you. Great presentation. I like the simplicity of the app. The yes/no questions, I think, makes it very easy for users to kind of navigate their way through it. I'm interested to know about what key questions you asked users to determine the process, or what information to provide in the app.
I'm happy to take that one. So we had a look through a lot of different types of visas to figure out exactly what the eligibility criteria were. One key issue we ran into was that every individual who applies for a refugee or humanitarian visa has very, very different circumstances. So it is impossible for us to assess whether they'd actually be granted this visa. We could only assess their eligibility. So we narrowed it down to the most minimal questions possible that we could give yes or no answers to in order to direct individuals to the most appropriate visa for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It was really great to see how accessible and minimal it is. That's really important for this kind of situation. Given it was a quick walkthrough, you can't really get a sense of how many use cases this caters for. Can you just kind of give me an overview of to what kind of situations this can apply?
So this chatbot can apply to anybody who's considering the refugee visa or temporary visa regime. So if you look through the questions or anything like that, it will arrive you at one of the relevant refugee visa subclasses. Or alternatively, if you don't fit any of the criteria, it will give you another option for other visas, which will then direct you to the department website where you'll get another list of options as well.
Yep. And within that kind of cohort, was there anyone specifically suitable for this, like any kind of subgroup within the refugee class that you were considering, or is just anyone who has that kind of issue?
So we basically consider anybody, a user, anybody who's just considering moving to Australia or starting the application process, just to give them a starting point of where to proceed or go on.
Cool, thank you.
You guys get a chance to, I know you mentioned you spoke to Refugee Legal. Did you get a chance to share the bot with them and get any feedback? And did you incorporate some of that feedback into the bot?
Yeah, we absolutely did. One of the initial things we were trying to decide on was the name, and we came up with some funky ideas, but then realized something simple and easy to be understood, especially with users who may have different experiences with English, was really, really important. We also asked whether it was handy to have the answers recorded in the report, and we were told that, yeah, that's actually really valuable so that users know what they've input. And another thing was the fact we had two reports, the downloadable one and the emailed one. It's really helpful so that you can actually email the report directly to Refugee Legal as well. So there are different options there, and that was based on user testing.
Thanks, Sasha. Good job, guys. That's it.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you, group. Wonderful work. All right, we've got 2 more to go. The WEstjustice intake assistant is next.
My name's Rose, and together with my team, Sundus, Jack, Brian, and Christina, who you'll all hear from, we've been working on developing the WEstjustice Intake Assistant. And this is a proof of concept for a way to make community legal centre intake processes more efficient. So for our app, we wanted to use technology to help increase productivity and efficiency in service delivery at community legal centres in order to help them meet the rising demands of their communities despite their limited resources. So I volunteered at WEstjustice Community Legal Centre for 3 years, from the beginning of my Juris Doctor to the end of last year. And I contacted them at the start of Law Apps and gave them a range of suggestions about ideas I had for legal tech we could develop for them. The idea they most liked was an app which would actually perform the same role I had at WEstjustice as a student volunteer at their motor vehicle accident clinic. In this role, I spoke to clients who came into the clinic in order to get the relevant facts from them about their motor vehicle accident. I then passed this information on to the duty lawyer to assist with advice. By replacing my role and guiding the client through the process of giving the necessary information, our app means that fewer of the legal centre's limited resources are used and assistance is delivered more quickly to clients once they arrive at the clinic.
So after making several prototypes and sending them back and forth to WEstjustice for feedback, we quickly learned that lawyers at WEstjustice need to complete a conflict check prior to receiving extensive and sensitive information from their clients. We resolved this issue by splitting our app in 2, where our client would first provide their general information. The lawyers will review the information for conflict check, and if the lawyer approves, the motor vehicle accident form would then be sent to the clients. Because an app which was optimized for browsers was not optimized for mobile, and vice versa, we created the different versions for phone and browser to give options for WEstjustice's clients. We wanted to create an app that is intuitive and easy to navigate. We wanted our user to trust us while using the app. To achieve these goals, we use the persona, Maya, to determine if we are achieving our goals. Maya isn't really confident with technology. She can read and write English, but may be confused by obscure language. The legal process causes her a lot of anxiety. We addressed Maya's needs through visual, linguistic, and functional design choices. The design choices were further refined based on user testing over the last few weeks. We will highlight some of them right now in the following app walkthrough.
At the start of the process, WEstjustice made it clear to us that clients at their service need more than just legal advice. They need a discussion with a lawyer to help make sense of the advice and to help ease their anxiety. Because of this, our focus in making the intake assistant was not to completely eliminate a lawyer's interaction with the client, but rather on automating other aspects of the process so that the community legal centre's energy would be focused on the thing which is hard to automate, the personalized attention with a vulnerable client. The introduction page acts as a roadmap for our client, Maya. We explain what the app does, why it's important, the steps it will involve, the time it will take, and what happens after it's complete. To reassure Maya that the application is professional and linked to an organization that she trusts, we matched the color scheme and design of the app to the WEstjustice website. Due to Maya's lack of English literacy confidence, we use icons to act as visual cues for her. We have also chosen simple, non-legalistic language throughout the apps. We included this line to ensure that Maya is not discouraged from continuing with the legal advice process if she's confused by one aspect of the form. The goal of the assistant is to save labor by gathering most of the information needed, but not to create a perfectly complete form every single time. So moving on to the privacy page. This is important for establishing trust and the professionalism of the service. We want to be upfront about what exactly will be done with the information Maya gives us so that she can make an informed decision. We created a progress bar as a roadmap here in order to keep Maya looped in and give her a sense of progression.
So here we see Maya is just progressing through the stages of the interview. First providing a description of the accident. And we have these text hints here to help, oh sorry, these are pre-filled answers. So we have these text hints here just to help Maya understand what kind of answers we were looking for. We also have these hints, these helpful hints, which can expand on some complicated concepts. Moving through, Maya answers questions about any damage to her vehicle, personal injuries, and financial assessment. And here we have the review screen. So this is the final page. So here Maya can go back through the form and change any inputs that she wasn't sure of. Submit. There we go, the session's complete. Maya can download her report here and view it here. So let's see the email that Maya receives. So this is the client's email and it has the attached completed forms here. Now, this is the lawyer email. So I should just say we matched this client email to the style of a normal WEstjustice email just to instill trust and confidence in the organization. And here we have the lawyer's email. Let's take a look at the lawyer's report. So this is the lawyer's report. The lawyer receives the pre-filled report, which is what Maya receives as well. But this report also has a section that the lawyer can use in the in-person interview. So it has this advice checklist. So this can be printed or opened in Word doc format and used to help Maya in her in-person interview. So just to quickly show you, this is our general intake assistant form as well. And this has all the same features that I've just highlighted. And again, this is the lawyer's version of the report, which again at the bottom here has an office use section which the lawyer can use in their interview with the client. So I'll pass to Christina to conclude.
Thanks, Jack. So to conclude, we'd like to talk about the broader application of our apps. We believe that with some variations on the WEstjustice specific theme, our general intake and motor vehicle accident assistant could be used by any community legal centres to automate this part of the intake process to save time and resources. While we have not explored other legal areas in depth, we also believe that due to the flexibility of our system and the fact that it does not seek to replace a lawyer, similar applications could be created for other areas which community legal centres service. There are currently 48 legal community centres in Victoria who dealt with over 90,000 matters last year, despite their limited resources. Due to this, we believe that increasing their efficiency through automation has significant potential to increase access to justice in Victoria. Thank you for listening to our presentations. We're now ready for any questions.
Thank you very much. Excellent. All right, we're over to the judges.
Quick one from me about just the conflict check. I mean, first, sorry, great presentation. And it looks like there was a lot of work in, there's kind of a lot of different components that you've sort of built out there. But I was particularly interested in how that would work with the conflict check system, because it sort of looks like you sort of have the intake, then the conflict check, and then you kind of come back and have further questions. So whether or not there was any sort of consideration around potentially integrating with their existing conflict check system for a future version. And also just about the fact that you'd be answering quite a few questions in the first part of the application. and then undergoing a conflict check, which they may be ruled out because there's a conflict. And if there's any consideration about, you know, reusing that information they've already entered in, or maybe reducing that information so that they're kind of not feeling like they just wasted their time filling it in.
I'm happy to take this one because this is actually something that was one of the big things that we spend a lot of time thinking through and trying to figure out solutions to during the process. So the current system at WEstjustice is at WEstjustice currently, there is a general intake form, which clients will come into the community legal centre. So they'll come into the motor vehicle accident clinic, they'll complete the general intake form, which has the same questions on it as our current general intake form. Then they'll give that to the lawyer, and then the lawyer will go on to class and check to see if there is a conflict. And then if there is a conflict, they'll just have to send the client home or refer them to somewhere else, which is a bad result, because they have come into the legal centre at that point and entered that information. So we discussed this with WEstjustice, and they said they really didn't want clients to enter significant information about a motor vehicle accident before completing that conflict check, but their current system had them completing the information in the general intake form before the conflict check was completed. So they were comfortable with us doing it like that. We really wanted to try and integrate it with the class software, and we actually talked to the people at Neota about that. But pretty much that was the take on that was outside the scope of a university assignment, is integrating with class. But in our design document, we wrote about how if we could ever do that, it would be a really great step to take. Regarding the information crossover, we tried to limit that as much as possible. Pretty much the only information crossover is the name and the date of birth and the email address, I'm pretty sure. And that's just because we need to identify the client who is completing the form. And we weren't able to figure out a way of making an app where the lawyer interacts with the app and then the client interacts with the app again. So we had to split it into two separate apps.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. It's a great use case and something people, especially community legal centers, are trying to solve online intake in all kinds of ways. You've done a good job of breaking down the form and kind of replicating the important information. Was there any consideration of, so there's help tips to describe what the question is asking in terms of making definitions, but was there any consideration of more kind of contextual information to explain why questions are being asked, just especially for things like income that people might find sensitive?
I think that's a really excellent question. We tried to include some information on the info form about why the app was being completed and what the app would be used for, like on the initial introduction. But I do think that would be a good addition to it.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
I think it was a great presentation, a great app, but I do think it has some really wide application. And I think that's what's kind of exciting for it. I think, as the previous judge said, this is something that people are crying out for, a bit of an intake app. So I think the concept is very, very relevant.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, maybe we'll see it at Herbert Smith Freehills, this intake app in the future. I imagine all the work that you're doing with clients with those things.
Very relevant.
Yeah, great. Okay, we are on to our last app. It's called DateSafe.
I'll just mention before we start a brief content warning, because we will be discussing sexual violence and harassment today. So if you don't want to listen to that now, it would be a good time to mute the device. Okay. So hi, everybody. My name's John, and along with my teammates Nathan, Crystal, and Dundee, today we produced DateSafe, an application commissioned by the Neighbourhood Justice Centre aimed at educating Australians on their privacy and safety risks of using mobile dating applications. Ultimately, by providing this education, our application seeks to help prevent the prevalence of technology-facilitated sexual violence, also known as TFSV, which has been on the rise in the past decade. TFSV can include sexual harassment, cyberstalking, image-based abuse, or coercion into unwanted sex.
Thanks, John. When speaking with the NJC about what they wanted in this application, they specified 3 key goals. Firstly, informing users as to the risks and dangers of TFSV. Secondly, informing users about the safety features and risks of popular dating apps. And lastly, providing users with actionable tips to stay safe while using apps online. As such, the problem we had to solve was how to present all this information in an engaging way such that users would actually want to access and utilize the platform. As a result, we came up with a 3-part application comprised effectively of 3 mini apps targeted at users in different stages of using dating applications. We will now take you through these 3 parts of the application. So let's take a hypothetical situation. Jane is a 22-year-old straight woman and has just left a long-term relationship. She's looking to use dating apps, but knows nothing about which apps to use and the dangers of TFSV. As such, DateSafe's app questionnaire is an attractive feature to her. She goes onto the application and is met with the orientation page introducing the app and its respective sections. I think it hasn't, I'm not sure if it's showing up on the screen yet.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Sorry, give me a moment. I'll just swap the screen over.
Once she clicks continue, she is directed to information about TFSV. This then prompts her to read the general information page, which contains more in-depth information about the forms of sexual violence, such as cyber abuse and stalking. This part of the app also includes general information about safe online behavior and relevant dating app policies and other safety features. Jane then goes to the questionnaire and then enters in her information. This includes her gender, her sexual orientation, and other user preferences, including safety and data privacy preferences. In every question, Jane is presented with relevant safety information, which will help her answer these questions. DateSafe then recommends 3 apps, which have taken into account her requirements, and also a detailed table outlining the safety and security features of other apps in case she's not satisfied with her recommendations and she wants to compare. Alternatively, she can also just go back into the quiz. Let's say she's concerned about data privacy and security, and she will get different results. Dandy will now talk about the research method in terms of how we concluded and ranked these apps.
Thanks, Nathan. We didn't really rank the apps specifically because they each serve so many different things, so many different types of people and so many different purposes and cultures. However, we did narrow down a variety of factors that we thought would be most helpful to the users. We decided to review the top 10 most popular dating apps in Australia, and we took into account the categories like whether or not they had photo and phone verification to ensure a higher likelihood of a real person on the other end, whether the app offered extra safety features, and advanced unmatching protections, that is to say, further features to minimize or prohibit contact between a user and someone they may have unmatched, and whether the app offered extra account security options such as 2-factor authentication. We also noted if the app has had any history of publicly known data breaches to notify potential users of an app cybersecurity track record. Once a user finishes browsing the segment, they then move on to the assessment portion. Over to you, Crystal.
Thank you, Dandy. The second section of DateSafe is the assessment. It consists of 16 questions and is divided into 3 categories. The assessment section is designed specifically for the group who have some level of experience in using dating apps and wondering whether they are using dating apps safely. In order to incorporate that to the design of DateSafe, we added a feature as an immediate reaction to the user's response where necessary. For example, for question 4, when the user chooses yes, a note would pop up recommending an alternative behavior. During user testing, some of the questions need more clear explanation, so we added pop-up windows to assist users in answering those questions. For example, for the 5th question, multi-factor authentication is not a term of common knowledge. Therefore, we have a pop-up window for its definition. Due to time limit in presenting, we set default answers for the next 2 pages of questions as well. These are category 2 and category 3 questions. At the end of the assessment component, it will generate an output based on users' answers as to whether the user is using dating apps safely. Finishing the assessment component, the user could either choose to end the session or continue to the reporting component, which I will now pass on to John to talk about.
Thanks, Crystal. So the final section of DateSafe aims to provide general information to the user about reporting to the police if they feel they have experienced technology-facilitated sexual violence. The user also has an option to be directed to general support services for sexual violence if they choose. And so if they select this option, the user is then taken to a page which offers various support services offered in each Australian state. We believe this is an important option for users who may not be sure whether they want to make a full report to the police. We recognise that that can often be a very serious and daunting task, and this way users can instead access specialist services in a more informal manner. However, if the user goes back and selects that they would like to make a police report instead, then they're directed to a general disclaimer outlining some of the more common concerns that they might have in making a police report. They're then taken through a step-by-step guide on what making a police report will look like. First, the app provides information to the user on how they can contact the police. Second, it explains how the police report is likely to be conducted. This page informs the user about who they should expect to speak to and certain entitlements they have in a police interview. The third step of this section explains to the user what is likely to happen once a report is completed. It also addresses a number of common concerns that users may have once they have submitted their report. Finally, the user is redirected to the support services section if they would like to access these services once again. And with that, that concludes DateSafe. Thank you for listening. We welcome the questions.
Thank you very much. I'm handing over to the judges.
Hey everyone, great design. I thought the app looked great. I have a question around where you envisioned the app would be placed. Like, have you ever thought about, whether it's going to be on the Neighborhood Justice Center website, or how will we get users to kind of review your app before they kind of jump on and try a dating app?
We did have this discussion initially when we were thinking of making the app, and we had leaned towards actually producing our own website to host the app. Unfortunately, it fell outside of the scope of our assignment, but that was our idea, to have a separate website attached to this, because it's very much its sort of own thing, and that way it could be linked to various organisations that might want the app to be used.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. That was something I'm learning about, not very much aware of. So I'm just kind of interested in describing a bit more about the problem you're trying to solve, and especially where things like data breaches relate to that, as opposed to monitoring someone's behavior or reporting on people's behavior. So just a bit more context around the actual, the user need and the problem.
Yep, so maybe I'll handle that one. The NJC came to us and they really just wanted this app to have educative component. So really just making sure that people who use dating apps just knew the relative risks and safety features of sharing all their private data, as well as all the different things that can happen with regards to technology facilitated sexual violence. So that was the scope of our problem, just to inform people. But obviously one issue we encountered is we can't just have a whole bunch of text in a app collated somewhere, because there might not be a good reason to just want to access that test. So we try to structure our the presentation of that information around 3 different apps. So for example, not knowing which app to use, or having an incentive to find out, which popular dating app would be more appropriate to me, would be kind of an opportunity to also inform users while they're making inputs in the questionnaire. Hey, by the way, if you want, by the way, there's some apps that will prioritize maybe, let's say, female initiated conversation. And so that's a safety feature. Or there's some apps that have LGBTQI plus spaces only, and that can be a form of safety as well. So it was just finding ways to inform users as much as possible, since that was kind of what the NJC wanted with DateSafe.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Specifically, to answer your question about data breaches in brief, when we realized that on top of what you can do to protect yourself, there's not much you can do if you weren't aware that a company has a history of having poor cybersecurity, or a history of collecting all your personal information and then losing it. due to some human failing or some like security or some cyber security issue. So we thought it was relevant to incorporate that from our user testing. They actually appreciated. Many of them didn't know to even look into whether or not companies had data breaches before. So they thought that was quite helpful.
Great, thanks.
All right. One question just about the pathway for reporting. So you've kind of got all of the steps if you want to report to the police. Did you explore kind of whether or not it should include the reporting steps for to the actual app? You know, say Tinder, you actually go through the process of reporting it within Tinder and whether or not they're known to respond to those and that sort of thing?
The information on in-app reporting was actually covered in our general information section. Mostly our conversation on that talks about how it's not a substitute to reporting to the police, and that more often than not, you do generally get a generalized response from dating applications in terms of making a report. So we do encourage that if there is a serious concern, that contacting the police is the best avenue. So that's included in the educative section.
That concludes the presentations from all of the students. What a wonderful, wonderful range of presentations and wonderful range of apps and bots. Now the judges are about to go off to the breakout room to spend some time working out which is the best Herbert Smith Law app or bot for 2021 semester one. And now it's time to look at the poll. So there's going to be an audience poll now, and if you look at your screen, you'll find out what you need to do. The poll, I think, is on the bottom of this. There we go. The poll is now coming up, at least on my screen, and hopefully everybody else. So you're only allowed to vote once. I'm not going to vote. I get to do the assessment afterwards. So pop in your votes and you'll have the time until the judges have decided. All right, have we got the judges? We've got all of the judges here. David, maybe if you can speak and we can just get you to come on to the main part of the screen.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Can you hear me, Gary?
Yes, we can. Off you go.
All right, excellent. Look, on behalf of Herbert Smith Freehills, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation in the Law Apps program and their presentations today. We've been involved, as Gary said, for a number of years, and I have to say this is one of the most impressive presentations that we've seen. Each of the presentations given today was sensational and had been well thought through and were given due consideration by every team member. So it was a very hard decision for the judges to make as to what was the best law app, but I won't hold you any further and say that the winner of the Herbert Smith Freehills Best All-Round Law App Bot for 2021 is Protections at Work. Very hard decision. I have to say lots of great commendations to Tōtara, for CoRR, and to all the apps. In fact, quite frankly, we were talking about all of them. Our voting was very close on all of them and all the categories that you gave. Just a little bit on Protections at Work and probably why at the end of the day we ended up choosing it. Look, we thought they distilled lots of information into a very simple process and form. It was well considered from a user perspective. And at the end of the day, it was the best of a very, 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 very good bunch of applications, and I can see all of them, having some form of use going into the future. And I think about where we're at in this current COVID environment, the use of digital and digital transformation within the legal industry is here to stay and is a very important part of the way we'll be practicing and operating going into the future. So I think each of these apps provide the basis of a very good solution for problems going into the future.
Thank you, David, and thank you, judges. All the students, you feel free to put on at least your video now for all the students in the class so we can all see you, because it's a wonderful thing to see your faces. Can I, first of all, as I said, I'd like to thank the judges for their work, but I'd also want to just say what a wonderful, wonderful group of applications and bots that you've done over the semester. I mean, really amazing. I've been getting texts and chat messages from people that are watching just saying how absolutely extraordinary, really, really wonderful work. So thank you so much. I know it's always a little disappointing when you don't win the award, but I can say that all of the work that you've done was really quite incredible. The audience poll. The audience poll goes to CoRR, the Conflict Resolution Roadmap. So congratulations to them as well. So thank you everybody for participating. Really appreciate all the work that you've done. Thank you very much, Herbert Smith Freehills, for your support now and for the rest of the year as well. So thank you much, everybody else, for all of your work. You haven't got long to go for the end of the semester. Best of luck for the rest of your assessment, and thank you to the audience that have also been participating as well.